Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show that takes the sources, the detailed reports, the police notes, all those suspect theories, and gives you instant intelligence.
Glad to be here.
Today, we are really immersing ourselves in a mystery that just took, well, probably the most shocking turn imaginable. We're talking about the shooting of Drew Kane Quartermain.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah.
We thought we were tracking a fairly standard Port Charles crime, right? Maybe a business rival, maybe a scorned ex, maybe just, typical Quartermain family drama.
Right, the usual suspects.
Exactly. But the whole core assumption has just been blown apart. The main question isn't just who pulled the trigger anymore.
Okay.
It's why the physical evidence, the actual gun used, has led the PCPD, that's the Port Charles Police Department, for anyone needing a reminder, why it led them somewhere that, frankly, nobody expected.
Okay, let's unpack this right away, because the whole investigation, initially, it was all anchored to this idea, this assumption that the gun, which sources confirm, is an old heirloom firearm belonging to Edward Quartermain.
Right, Q family gun.
It had to be at the Quartermain mansion. That's the logical place, right? Scene of the drama where the victim lives.
Seems obvious.
But our sources, they confirm this huge narrative pivot. Lead investigators Anna Devane and Harrison Chase, they served a search warrant. But not on the Q mansion, on the, well, much more modest home of General Hospital head nurse Elizabeth Weber.
And that changes everything. It really does.
It completely flips the script.
It's the ultimate disruptive detail. Finding that gun, the key piece of evidence at Liz's house, it immediately puts a huge spotlight on every single person living there. And the source material, it's very explicit. It narrows the field right down to 3 immediate suspects sharing that space.
Who are we talking about?
Elizabeth Weber herself, obviously, as the homeowner. Then Willow Tate. And maybe most surprisingly, young Scout Kane, Drew's own daughter.
Wow. Okay. So our mission today, then, diving deep into these sort of materials, the police developments, it's kind of twofold.
I'd say so. First, we've got to meticulously look at the motive, the alibi, the strategic interest maybe for each potential culprit. Liz, Willow, Scout.
Right. Break it down for each of them.
And second, maybe even more crucial, we need to understand the sort of cascading consequences of Drew's own actions. How did those actions lead that weapon, this Quartermain artifact, to end up stashed somewhere completely different, in a totally separate house?
Okay. So when Commander Devane and Detective Chase show up with that warrant, find the gun, the focus immediately goes to the people living there.
Instantly. The implication is someone in that house is central to the crime. But, the process of elimination here, it's actually pretty swift.
Yeah.
And necessary.
Which brings us straight to the first person under the microscope, the homeowner, Elizabeth Weber. Even though, as you hinted, her role shifts pretty quickly from potential suspect to, well, something else entirely.
Right. We have to start by clearing the most obvious target. The person who suddenly found herself in the hot seat just because of her address.
Liz Weber.
Liz Weber. Despite this, staggering discovery of the gun at her place, Liz is instantly and completely cleared. The sources couldn't be clearer. She is not considered a suspect.
Why not? What clears her so definitively?
She has an alibi that is, frankly, ironclad, airtight.
Okay. What was she doing?
She was working.
Yeah.
Actively working at General Hospital. She's the head nurse, remember? And she was there on duty throughout the entire night of the shooting.
And this isn't just like sitting in an office somewhere.
No. She was performing duties, interacting constantly with staff, with patients, all recorded, all logged. Her professional activities give her this, timestamp shield.
Okay. So witnesses, records.
Loads of them. The sources specify her alibi is backed up by multiple colleagues, numerous patients she cared for, other hospital pros like Lucas, another nurse. They can all verify she was there. Her time card entries match up.
So there's just no window, no way she could have slipped out.
Zero window. Absolutely none. Couldn't have left the hospital, gone to the Q estate, done the deed, and gotten back without anyone noticing. It's impossible.
But hang on a second. Let's clarify for our listeners, especially the learner audience. Edward Quartermain's gun, it's the significant family heirloom.
Right.
How did the PCPD explain it, being at Liz's house? If she didn't do it, how did they think it got there? Did the sources touch on that rationale?
Yeah, that's where the investigation gets interesting. See, the goal of the warrant wasn't necessarily proving Liz did it. It was finding the gun. That was the priority.
Okay, find the evidence first.
Exactly. Once they located the weapon at her address, the focus immediately shifted.
Yeah.
It wasn't did Liz do it,
Yeah.
it became who brought it here.
Oh, okay.
The sources imply the PCPD figured out pretty quickly it must have been moved by one of the other residents. The big questions were, when did it get there and who brought it?
So Liz's rock-solid alibi wasn't just about clearing her name.
No, it did more than that.
Mm-hmm.
Because she was demonstrably at the hospital the whole time, it actually establishes a time frame where her presence is absolute.
Which makes someone else's absence during that same period look even more suspicious.
Precisely. Her alibi clears her, but it simultaneously casts suspicion elsewhere. And this is where Liz, inadvertently, becomes a key witness against someone else.
How so?
Because while she was busy doing her head nurse duties, tending to patients, managing staff, she noticed something specific about one of her housemates who was also supposed to be working that night.
Willow Tate.
Willow Tate. Liz was the one who clocked Willow's unexplained absence. Highly irregular, apparently, for her to be away from our nursing station like that.
And that observation is critical.
Absolutely critical, because it nails down the exact timing of Willow's movements, or, her lack of movement at the hospital. It confirms Liz was focused on her job, not covering anything up.
She basically became an accidental witness, establishing how thin someone else's alibi might be.
And to put it better myself, she sets the stage for the next phase in the investigation.
Okay. So, with the homeowner cleared by this impeccable professional alibi, the spotlight has to pivot. It moves entirely to the next adult resident sharing that space.
Which brings us squarely to Section 2. The plausible yet complicated adult suspect, Willow Tate.
Right. Willow moved into Liz's house after her life basically fell apart.
Completely imploded is probably the right word. She'd been engaged to Drew, remember. But that relationship just disintegrated. Spectacularly.
When she found out he was cheating on her with her own mother, Nina Reeves.
Yeah, talk about betrayal. So motive. She has a ready-made motive rooted in this profound, immediate emotional turmoil. Intense anger, intense hurt.
And this wasn't some quiet breakup. This was huge, public, explosive emotional wreckage. The whole town saw it.
Exactly. The sources describe her as being at absolute rock bottom. She'd also just recently lost custody of her kids in a completely separate, really bitter legal fight.
So grief compounding grief and rage.
A very volatile mix. She dumped Drew at the altar, publicly humiliated him, and she admitted it, point blank. She hated him.
Wow, okay. So that combination, the loss, the public shame, the raw hatred, it definitely makes her seem like a plausible candidate. Someone who might snap, confront him, maybe things escalate.
Highly plausible. And that intense emotional state is exactly why the PCPD zoomed in on her immediately, especially when they started looking into her whereabouts during that critical time window.
The time Liz noticed she was missing from her post.
Precisely. And her alibi, well, it came from her mother. Nina Reeves provided the alibi for Willow.
Okay.
And the sources, they repeatedly describe this alibi as thin, unsubstantiated, some even say non-existent in the eyes of serious police work.
Okay, hold on. For our learner audience again, why does a mother providing an alibi automatically make it thin for the police? What's the reasoning there?
Well, it really boils down to objectivity, or the lack of it, and potential conflict of interest.
Right. Mom's going to protect her daughter.
That's the assumption, yeah. It's inherently suspect because of that loyalty, that incentive to protect. It's not like getting confirmation from, say, Liz's professional colleagues who are unrelated third parties.
Makes sense. Less objective.
Much less. But here's the kicker. The detail that really poisoned the well for the PCPD. Willow herself apparently accused Nina of providing a false alibi.
Wait, Willow accused Nina. Why?
Get this. Willow suspected Nina was using her to secure an alibi for Nina's own shady activities that night.
Whoa, so mutual deception, or at least the accusation of it.
Exactly. It just throws the entire defense into chaos for the police. If the witness, Nina, might be lying according to the person she's supposedly covering for. And that person, Willow, is also accusing the witness of lying for her own reasons.
Yeah, the police have basically nothing reliable there. They have to discount it.
They have no choice. And then you layer in the physical evidence, the evidence that contradicts the idea she's just tucked away somewhere in the hospital.
Ah, right. This is the really damning detail you mentioned earlier.
The clincher. Willow returned to her nursing station after that unexplained absence Liz noted, and she was soaked from the rain.
Soaked. Okay, that's huge. If she was just hiding in a break room or resting somewhere inside GH.
She wouldn't be wet. No way. The rain confirmed she absolutely left the hospital building. She went outside into the elements.
Which strongly suggests she was likely heading somewhere, maybe to confront Drew at the Q Mansion or wherever she thought he'd be.
That's the strong implication. It provides physical proof she wasn't, where her initial already weak alibi claims she was. It turns that thin alibi into a potentially false one.
Okay, so let's recap, Willow. We have intense motive betrayal, hatred, rock-bottom emotional state. We have confirmed opportunity she was absent from her post. And we have physical evidence, the rains, suggesting she left the hospital and was likely distraught.
It looks like a very strong case against her on the surface.
Oh.
Very strong.
Yet, the sources seem to suggest that despite all this, she's strategically an unlikely shooter. How does that work?
Yeah, this is where we need to dig into the counter-evidence. The arguments against her being the one who pulled the trigger.
And it hinges on strategy, her bigger goals.
It does, largely. First, while she was clearly emotionally volatile, the source's psychological profile suggests that resorting to, lethal violence, like shooting someone, it seems out of character for Willow.
Okay, character argument. What else?
The bigger argument is purely pragmatic, strategic. Attempted murder would be fundamentally, completely counterproductive to her ultimate overriding goal at that moment.
Which was?
Regaining custody of her children. She had just lost them. That was her absolute priority.
Right, and if she gets arrested, charged with a felony, like attempted murder?
Her custody chances evaporate instantly, vanish overnight. Any court would immediately see her as an unfit parent. It would override everything else.
Okay, that makes sense. Shooting Drew torpedoes, her main objective?
Precisely. And then there's a second piece of strategic counter-evidence, something that surfaced after the shooting happened. The existence of a legal document. A document naming Willow as Scout's legal guardian, should something happen to Drew.
Whoa. Okay, that's significant. How does that play in?
Well, think about it. If she had shot Drew, she wouldn't be in any legal position to actually use that document. No court would grant custody to someone under investigation for trying to murder the child's parent.
True. The document assumes she's fit legally and morally.
Exactly. It was drafted under that assumption. So by shooting Drew, she'd actually be guaranteeing the kids stayed tangled up in the system, maybe foster care or whatever, the exact opposite of what she wanted.
So Willow had the rage, definitely. Had the opportunity, looks like. Physical evidence suggests she was out in the rain, probably upset. But strategically, violence was just complete self-sabotage. It runs counter to every goal she had regarding her kids.
That seems to be the conclusion the deeper analysis in the sources points towards. The police might have seen her as the most likely adult suspect, sure, but the narrative analysis suggests she was perhaps a distraction, a red herring, almost.
So, if the adult resident, the one with the strongest motive and the shakiest alibi, is actually strategically unlikely,
then the investigation has to pivot again. It has to turn towards the most shocking, the most unexpected person living in that house.
which leads us directly into Section 3, the big twist. Scout Kane.
This is where the complexity just explodes. The focus shifts completely, away from adult betrayal, adult motives, and onto profound childhood trauma.
And the possibility that Scout, who's just a tween, maybe 12, 13 years old, that she is the shooter. The sources call this the most unexpected twist, a jaw-dropping revelation.
And it needs extensive detail. Because the sources, they don't just throw this out there. They don't present Scout as some, spontaneously violent kid.
No.
No. They build this incredibly comprehensive, truly agonizing motive. They detail exactly why this child might have been pushed, as they put it, to the brink.
So the shooting isn't framed as just a crime.
Not at all. It's framed as the inevitable tragic explosion resulting from sustained parental neglect, from emotional isolation, from incredibly controlling behavior by Drew.
Okay. Where do we start with Scout's motive? It sounds like there's a lot there.
We have to begin with the foundation, the underlying distress, grief. Scout's trauma didn't just start with Drew's recent actions. It began a year before.
Right. She was still grieving the death of her mother.
Her mother, Sam McCall, who was tragically, violently murdered by the criminal Cyrus. That loss left Scout incredibly vulnerable, deeply reliant on whoever was left.
Her support structures, like Dante, her family.
Exactly. Dante Connery, who had really stepped up as a father figure, and her maternal family. So when Drew comes back into her life properly, he wasn't just a returning parent. The sources paint him as an agent of disruption, someone who further destabilized a child already drowning in unresolved grief.
They call him a bad dad.
Explicitly. Focus entirely on his own selfishness, controlling his image, controlling his future, not focus on his grieving daughter's needs.
Okay. Let's really dedicate some time here. Let's break down the specific actions by Drew. The things that piled up created this overwhelming trauma, this potential motive. The sources list them out, right?
They do. It's like a series of escalating blows that just eroded Scout's mental health one by one.
What was the first major one?
The first big strike against his parenting, according to the sources, it came almost right away. The prison swap.
Ah, when he went to federal prison instead of Carly Corinthus Spencer.
Yes, he chose to serve time for his former lover, who was facing charges. Now, from Scout's perspective, the sources frame this as Drew prioritizing another adult over his absolute duty to his daughter.
Especially a daughter who just lost her mom.
Exactly. He effectively ditched her during her most vulnerable period. He chose absence.
That's a profound betrayal for a kid. He wasn't forced to be away, he chose it, showing her she wasn't the priority.
Precisely. And then when he got back, the control started. And it intensified. He tried to force her into this very exclusive, posh private school.
Against her will.
Completely against her expressed wishes. The sources are clear. This wasn't really about her education. It was about his image, his control. He was disregarding her feelings, trying to use her like a pawn to boost his own status, reinforcing that her feelings just didn't matter compared to his agenda.
That dismissal of her agency, her voice, it got worse, didn't it, with the name change?
Oh, dramatically worse. He unilaterally changed her last name to Quartermain. No conversation with her, no consent asked for. Just did it.
And the sources analyze that as more than just paperwork.
Much more. They see it as an attempt to erase her identity. Her connection to her deceased mother, Sam McCall, and her support system through Sam the Morgans. He was forcibly branding her as a Quartermain, embedding her in this family structure she was actually becoming more and more estranged from because of his actions.
Wow. And the isolation didn't stop with just changing her name?
No, he actively started putting physical distance between Scout and the people she loved and relied on most.
Her brothers.
Her brothers, Danny Morgan and Rocco Falconeri, and the father figure she adored, Dante Falconeri, who, the sources explicitly note, had been a much better, much more present dad to her than Drew ever was.
So Drew was systematically cutting off every single one of her reliable anchor points.
One by one, removing her support system.
This feels like it's building towards something specific. The sources mention an event in August as being a major turning point.
Yes, absolutely. That incident where Drew tried to get her own brother, Danny Morgan, arrested, that seems critical.
What happened there?
Scout had apparently begged Danny to take her to the Quartermain mansion. She wanted to visit Monica, see the family. It was maybe the one place she felt some connection, some peace.
Okay. And Danny helped her?
Yeah, like a supportive older brother. He helped her sneak out of Leia's kids' camp where she was staying, just to make that visit happen because she was so desperate.
And Drew found out?
Found out and retaliated. Big time. He called the police on Danny, tried to have him arrested for helping his sister.
Tried to have her brother arrested for taking her to see her grandmother.
That's how the sources frame it. The sheer cruelty of that action. It's hard to process. A kid asks for comfort, asks to see family, and the parent she should rely on responds by weaponizing law enforcement against the sibling who tried to help her.
That feels incredibly damaging.
It does. And the sources speculate this extreme reaction, using the police against her support system, might have been the exact moment Scout felt truly threatened. Maybe even the moment she grabbed that gun from the Q mansion, seeing Drew not just as neglectful, but as an active danger to her happiness and connections.
Could that be when she took it?
It's a strong possibility raised by the analysis. And if that wasn't enough to push a grieving, isolated child into total despair, the final devastating blow came shortly after.
What was that?
Drew took out restraining orders against her entire maternal family.
Restraining orders? Against who specifically?
Everyone. Her grandmother, Alexis Davis, her aunts, Christina Corinthos Davis, and Molly Lansing Davis.
He legally banned her from seeing her own grandmother and aunts.
Yes. And crucially, the sources stress this ban also extended to her brothers, Danny and Rocco. And it explicitly barred Scout herself from visiting the Quartermain mansion ever again.
My God. That's the absolute apex of control and isolation, isn't it?
It really is. Think about the psychological impact. A tween who's already lost her mom already feels abandoned by her dad choosing prison over her, and now he completely severs every single remaining familial tie.
Leaving her utterly alone.
Utterly alone in her grief. The message couldn't be clearer. Drew didn't care what Scout wanted or needed. He only cared about controlling his environment, controlling his assets. And Scout, unfortunately, was being treated like one of his assets.
And we have to loop back to Willow here for a second because there was another layer to Scout's pain involving her, right?
Yes, absolutely. Scout apparently adored Willow Tate. She really wanted Willow as a new mom figure in her life.
So when Drew's affair with Nina blew up the wedding,
Scout didn't just see Drew hurt Willow. She saw her own chance at having this new, supportive mother figure destroyed. By Drew's actions, it added this whole other layer of intense personal resentment towards him.
okay, so adding it all up, the grief, the neglect, the prison choice, the forced school, the name change, cutting her off from her brothers and Dante, trying to arrest Danny, and then the restraining orders banning her from her entire family and the Q mansion, plus ruining the potential relationship with Willow.
When you list it all out like that,
Mm.
Scout arguably had the most potent, the most emotionally justified motive in all of Port Charles to lash out, to strike back at the person causing her such systematic, relentless pain.
It paints a truly devastating picture. Which brings us back to the practicalities. The gun, found at Liz's house. How did a tween, Scout, access Edward Quartermain's gun, and how did it get from the Q mansion to Liz's place?
Well, access might not be as complicated as it sounds, especially given her recent activities. The sources suggest she had access to the Quartermain mansion during those times she was sneaking out of camp that summer.
Right, when she visited with Danny.
Exactly. She'd be familiar with the layout. And firearms, especially old heirlooms in big old houses like that,
Yeah.
sometimes they aren't secured as well as they should be. They might be in known locations.
So she could have found it. Or overheard adults talking.
Either is plausible. She could have overheard adults discussing family history, where things are kept over. People can be careless. Or she might have just stumbled upon it during one of those clandestine visits while exploring, found the gun, recognized its significance or potential power, and took it. Maybe around that time, Drew tried to have Danny arrested.
Okay, so she takes the gun from the Q mansion. How does it end up at Liz's?
The timing of the gun's discovery at Liz's makes perfect, almost chilling sense because of Scout's movements after the shooting.
She moved in with Liz.
Yes. Scout moved into Liz's place after the shooting incident. She and Willow went there together, seeking refuge from all the chaos Drew had created.
Ah, so she could have grabbed the gun earlier, maybe during the summer drama?
Held onto it. Maybe as a desperate measure. Maybe like a dark, traumatic souvenir. Who knows what goes through a kid's mind in that state?
And then just brought it with her when she moved into Liz's house.
Exactly. Brought it with her belongings, stashed it somewhere safe in her new room. A secret possession. It explains the location perfectly.
This theory, it gets even deeper, doesn't it, when we consider potential adult involvement. Maybe a cover-up after the fact.
Yes, the sources float a really dramatic possibility here. It involves Michael Corinthos.
What about Michael?
Well, it was known Michael was outside Drew's house, or nearby, around the time of the shooting. He had his own issues with Drew.
Okay.
The sources speculate. What if Michael actually saw Scout? Saw his young niece leaving Drew's house right after the shots were fired?
Wow, if he saw her, what would he do?
The speculation is he would have remained utterly silent, said nothing to the police, nothing to anyone, to protect her.
Protect Scout from the legal consequence.
Exactly. This adds this whole profound layer of ethical dilemma, familial protection. It shows how toxic Drew's actions were, so severe that they might have influenced other adults like Michael to potentially obstruct justice, break the law, just to shield this traumatized child.
Michael would be risking everything himself.
Risking his own standing, potentially facing charges, all to protect his niece from the fallout of her lashing out against a father Michael also despises. It complicates everything.
Okay, so if this shocking theory holds true, if Scout Kane really was the shooter, what happens to her? What are the projected consequences? Especially given, the town's history, the sympathy for kids, the sheer amount of trauma she endured.
Yeah, the sources are actually quite clear on the likely outcome.
Yeah, but
And it feels like a key part of the whole narrative payoff they're building.
what do they predict? Jail time, juvenile detention.
Highly unlikely. If Scout is confirmed as the shooter, the prediction is she'd face minimal, if any, actual legal repercussions.
Really? Minimal.
Minimal. Think about it. The entire town of Port Charles. They understand the context. They know the history. They witnessed Drew's behavior, the control, the isolation. They would naturally sympathize entirely with the child.
The blame would fall on Drew's actions.
Completely. The likely outcome projected in the sources is intense, sustained therapy, maybe a temporary stay at a facility like Shady Brook, focused purely on trauma recovery,
And then
released back into the custody of her supportive family members, the ones Drew tried to cut her off from. No court, and certainly nobody in Port Charles, would ultimately blame the child. They would indict the father's behavior.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize all of this. Bring it back to where we started. The gun at Liz's house.
Right. That discovery, the gun being at Liz's, it fundamentally rerouted the entire investigation. It forced everyone to look past the easy adult targets.
Like Willow, the scorned ex-fiancée.
Exactly. Whose strategic interests, as we discussed, just didn't align with violence. Finding the gun there shifted the focus toward the most volatile, the most neglected, the most traumatized person directly connected to Drew.
His daughter, Scout.
His daughter, Scout. The guns movement from the Q mansion to Liz's house. It's almost a metaphor, isn't it? It's like the physical trail of Scout's traumatic flight, fleeing her father's control, seeking safety in the arms of the few people left who actually showed her care, Liz and Willow.
So if we connect this whole narrative analysis, all these source details, to the bigger picture, this shooting isn't really a traditional whodunit mystery.
No, not in the classic sense. It's more like an indictment.
An indictment of Drew.
Absolutely. The shooting is framed less as a simple crime and more as the devastating psychological consequence of Drew's own actions, his horrible greed and controlling behaviors, as the sources put it, the impact on his child's mental health.
So the shooting serves a narrative purpose.
A huge one. It functions as this tragic, explosive reaction to severe parental neglect, severe control, behavior that systematically pushed a grieving child way beyond her capacity to cope. It's the story of a kid who had every single support system taken away.
Her mother, her name, her brothers, her aunts, Dante.
Systematically removed or attacked by the very person who was supposed to protect her, her father.
It really feels like the sources are setting up this ultimate narrative reckoning for Drew Kane Quartermain, shifting the moral weight entirely onto his shoulders.
I think you're right. It raises this massive question about responsibility, about redemption. And that's really the final thread tying all these sources together.
Which is?
If Drew survives this shooting and he finds out his own daughter shot him, will that overwhelming reality finally force him to confront the catastrophic moral failure of his parenting?
Will the ultimate consequence of his own selfishness, literally being shot by the person he was most responsible for protecting, will that be the catalyst? Will it force him to finally change his terrible, terrible ways, as the sources suggest?
Or will he just double down, play the victim again? That potential realization for Drew, that his own toxic control essentially became the weapon, turned back against him by his own child. That feels like the final provocative thought the sources leave us with.
A modern tragedy, really. Asking, at what point does that kind of parental control become the ultimate weapon itself?
A heavy question to ponder.
Indeed. We hope this deep dive gives you, our listener, the thorough knowledge and insight you need on this incredibly complex, unfolding narrative. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.
Until next time.